And we're live. This Autopen scandal is taking on a life of its own right now. I think Alina was the first one to bring it up, Alina Habba, back in March. And now Comer says he wants a congressional investigation, plus Donald Trump weighing in on it. It's almost like Jake Tapper really did, not only himself, but his party, his entire party in big time. We're going to get into all of that, plus Tom Homan. He's out. He's firing on all cylinders as only Tom Homan can, and he's demanding more arrests. He wants criminal prosecution for sanctuary city governors, lawmakers, mayors, you name it. Donald Trump wants everything onshored, including high-tech manufacturing, so all those Apple iPhones, you better start making them here or else. He's talking about a 25% tariff, and oh, poor Michelle Obama, my gosh. I mean, this is just getting ugly to watch, okay? Really, really ugly to watch. That marriage, as far as I'm concerned, is basically over, and I'm going to tell you why. Welcome to the show. Good to have you here. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. Guys, we are looking at an Autopen scandal that we've never quite seen in this country before. Because, you see, nobody ever did stuff like what Joe Biden did before. This is just unbelievable. And now it's caught the attention of the Oversight Committee in Congress. And now James Comer, Representative James Comer, is demanding an investigation. And I'll tell you, I'm just going to tell you right now, if this actually goes through, there's going to be some heads that really roll. I mean, think about all those pardons. Those pardons will be null and void. Think about all the decisions that Biden made, a few too many, that maybe he didn't make, that would then be null and void. We'll get into the legal complications of all this. But first, here is Representative Comer speaking last night.
Say that, no, they just talked to Joe Biden and he was tip-top. He was in great physical condition. He was at the top of his game. Now they're coming back covering the track saying, yeah, it looks like he was in mental decline. Well, we all know he's in mental decline. What we need to know is who was calling the shots at the White House. And one thing that was also mentioned on your show thus far is that when you sign a document that has legal implications, it has to be signed personally. It can't be signed by an Autopen. You use Autopen for proclamations and mass letters and things like that. So I think that if we can understand more about the Autopen and whether or not Joe Biden authorized it, I think this could lead to a lot of those executive orders being kicked out in court.
All right. And when do you expect these subpoenas to go out?
Well, the letters have already gone out to the staffers as well as Dr. O'Connor. So if we don't hear anything from them in a week, then I would expect to start seeing subpoenas.
And if they fight the subpoena, what do you do?
We'll go to court. Jesse, they're going to try to plead executive privilege, and they're lawyering up, and we're ready. That's why we're making sure every I's dotted and every T's crossed. The best thing that's happened in the last week with respect to this is all the new books that are coming out and all the former Biden staffers who are trying to cover their tracks. You're going to see people like Pete Buttigieg who think they have political futures come forward and say, you know, we didn't know anything. There were gatekeepers. They wouldn't let us speak with Joe Biden. And the more that comes out, the easier it's going to be to get to the truth.
You better believe it, right? I mean, all these books and all this information. Unc Andy, thank you so much for your generosity. You've been a member here on the channel for 2 months. Florida loves Trish. I love Florida, believe me. I also love the fact that you guys have 0% income tax and really good weather. Anyway, you saw that, right? So James Comer means business. They're going to be sending subpoenas in a week or so. And if they fight the subpoenas, they're lawyering up on the other side. I mean, look, guys, I kept saying it over and over again. I haven't played this one in like forever. I am going to show you a soundbite that I played you maybe about a year and a half ago, which just, I think, said it all. This is Joe Biden at some kind of gathering where he's supposed to be talking about the economy, and all of a sudden the reporters start asking him questions, and you can tell the poor man is clearly struggling. I mean, people are talking about elder abuse and all kinds of things at this point, because you watch this clip and you tell me if you think he knew what he was signing when he was signing. Watch.
I have a lot of questions. I better not start the questions. I'll get in trouble.
What's your message for Super Tuesday voters? Everyone please move this way. Super Tuesday said, do you have a message for voters? Thanks, come on.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
You see him? He's out of it. He's absolutely, positively out of it. This was one of those clips that just really hit me. And I guess it was from March 2024. I mean, I was like, wow, this poor guy is, you know, and unfortunately, like, we've probably all seen it. You've had loved ones that have suffered from this. And whatever you want to call it, that was some kind of decline. And everyone knew. Now we know, hey, thanks, Jake Tapper. I mean, you were too moronic and duplicitous to admit it to begin with, right? Over on CNN, just when you figured you can make a buck after the fact, you decide to come out with a book, but everybody's having to admit it now, yeah? You know, the guy was not playing with a full deck of cards. And if he wasn't playing with a full deck of cards and everything was being done by Autopen, and it naturally leads you to the question, well, who was the Autopen? And America did not elect the Autopen. Therefore, are any of those things that he was signing even valid? Here's Alina Habba. She first brought this up in March. She's now the U.S. District Attorney, of course, over in New Jersey. And she was one of the first ones to come out and poke around here and say, you know, this may not actually even be legal. And she's right.
They should have handed out more preemptive pardons, you're saying.
Listen, by the way, I wonder if those were auto-signed as well, because I would challenge the validity of it. You never know. Listen, the guy didn't even know what he was doing, but I'll tell you, the pardons, he knew what he was doing. I said it months before. He's going to pardon himself. And yes, I almost said to the president, listen, in the joint session speech, why don't you ask everybody that got a pardon to just stand up and tell us why you got a pardon.
Well, you know, that was bizarre at the time, right? I mean, all those pardons that they were doing were kind of bizarre because they were pardoning before the fact. I mean, that had never been done before. Why are you issuing pardons? Like, these people actually haven't been accused of a crime. So that was bizarre. And now we learn that, like, he wasn't really the one doing the pardoning. I mean, it was just the Autopen, and therefore it was somebody else entirely, which brings you to these questions, I should say, were Biden's orders and were his pardons actually illegal? Because you see, there's this part of the Constitution, Article 2, that says the president must, quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That means the president, the person that we elected. Now, I mean, if you want to put in the 25th Amendment and if you want to have Kamala take over, you could have done that, but we don't really know who was doing anything because everything was on Autopen and he was clearly out of it. Quote, if Biden was not authorizing nor mentally competent to authorize orders that were signed by Autopen, those documents, ladies and gentlemen, could be challenged as invalid and as unconstitutional. And this is what Trump keeps getting at, right?
Biden, look, it's a very sad thing what happened, but I believe we're going to start looking into this whole thing with who signed this legislation. Who signed legislation opening our border? I don't think he knew. I said there's nobody that could want an open border. Nobody. And now I find out that it wasn't him. He auto-penned it. Who was operating the auto-pen? This is a very serious thing. We had a president that didn't sign anything. He auto-penned almost everything. He opened the borders of the United States of America. And I kept saying, who would do such a thing? Allowing criminals to pour in from all over the world, not just South America, all over the world. They came in from Africa, they came in from Asia, they came from the Congo. The prisons in the Congo in Africa, these are rough people. The prisons from the Congo are empty. You know where they are? They're in this country. Who would sign this? Nobody would sign it. No sane person would sign it. You know who signed it? Radical left lunatics that were running our country, and the Autopen signed it. And they didn't want him, and they were disappointed in getting him because they wanted Bernie Sanders. And then after about 2 weeks, they said, wait a minute, this is a gift. He'll do anything. We're going to use the Autopen. And they used the Autopen and everything. He didn't approve this.
Wow. So, like, if he wasn't approving these things, again, who was? And I know the joke is, it was Mr. Autopen, O-T-T-O, right? We keep talking about that. Again, I think you have to ask these questions. Pardons, treaties, executive actions, all of this, ladies and gentlemen, could now be challenged in court. Dun-dun-dun. And it will be challenged in court. I have no doubt, given what we just heard from Comer. And again, is so much from Donald Trump lately is speaking to this. He spoke out about Biden's health and was making the point yet again that the man was not in the right state of cognitive ability in order to sign some of the things he was signing.
Do you want to respond to President Biden being diagnosed with cancer? Are you going to call your predecessor?
I think it's very sad, actually. I'm surprised that it wasn't, the public wasn't notified a long time ago. Because to get to stage 9, that's a long time. I just had my physical. You saw that. You saw the results of that particular test. I think that test is standard to pretty much anybody getting a physical, good physical. We had the doctors at the White House and over at Walter Reed, which is a fantastic hospital. I did a very complete physical, including cognitive tests. I'm proud to announce I aced it. I got them all right. You proud of me? Yes. Your husband would be proud of me for getting them all right. It's a little risk. If I didn't get them all right, these people would be after me. It would be not a good situation. But I think, frankly, anybody running for president should take a cognitive test. They say it's unconstitutional, but I would say in that particular case, having a cognitive test wouldn't be so bad. But when you take tests, medical tests, as a male, that test is very standard. I don't know if it's given to everybody, but it's given just about. And it takes a long time to get to that situation. Now, I think to get to a stage 9, I think that if you take a look, it's the same doctor that said that Joe was cognitively fine. There was nothing wrong with him. Well, he said, if it's the same doctor, he said there was nothing wrong there. That's being proven to be a sad situation. And the Autopen is becoming a very big deal. The Autopen is becoming a big deal because it seems like that maybe was the president who ever operated the Autopen. But when they say that that was not good, they also, you have to look and you have to say that the test was not so good either. In other words, there are things going on that the public wasn't informed, and I think somebody's going to have to speak to his doctor. If it's the same, or even if it's 2 separate doctors, why wasn't the cognitive ability, why wasn't that discussed? And I think the doctor said he's just fine, and it's turned out that's not so. It's very dangerous. Look, this is no longer politically correct. This is dangerous for our country. Look at the mess when you're talking about all these questions on Ukraine and Russia. That would have never happened. As an example of our president, would have never happened. The other thing is you have to say, why did it take so long? I mean, when this takes a long time. It could take years to get to this level of danger. So it's a very, very sad situation. I feel very badly about it. And I think people should try and find out what happened, because I'll tell you, I don't know if it had anything to do with the hospital. Walter Reed is really good. They're some of the best doctors I've ever seen. I don't even know if they were involved, but a doctor was involved in each case. Maybe it was the same doctor, and somebody is not telling the facts. It's a big problem.
In other words, you can't be getting to that kind of stage. I think his point is stage 9, where the prostate cancer is actually now in your bones, without having had some kind of attentive medical care along the way. And so the question becomes, either you didn't get the care you needed, and heck, you're the president of the United States, so you should have, right? Because otherwise our national security is being put at risk if nobody's actually attending to his medical needs. And if you did get the medical care you needed and people knew that he was this ill, then why were they lying to the public? And so either way, you're in a bad situation if you were on Team Biden and you were part of this. And moreover, the country's now been put in a bad situation because legally this is going to turn into a total quagmire. Again, going back to this question, were Biden's orders, were his pardons illegal? If he wasn't actually signing them, if he wasn't cognitive and part of this, then you can challenge every single one of those in court. So guess what, Hunter Biden, you're up. Guess what, Anthony Fauci, you're up. Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, I'm looking at all of you. And I'm also looking at all the policies that he signed and put into place and all these deals. So it's going to be a mess. And let me just say, Trump is willing to take that on. Don't kid yourself. And Comer's willing to take it on. You know why they're willing to take it on? Because of everything that they have been through and Donald Trump has been through and this country has been through. They're willing to go there. And so now all bets are off, and you're going to see a lot of fireworks in the coming week or weeks, ladies and gentlemen. And I think you also got to ask yourself this question. Just exactly who needs to pay the price? I mean, who in his inner circle was authorizing this? Dr. Jill comes to mind, does she not? You know, Dr. Jill, who is out there enabling him every step of the way, wanted him to keep running, along with one Hunter Biden. You know, it was so obvious. I played you the clip earlier of him not being able to handle the incoming of the reporters' questions. He used to do that a lot. He'd zone out. You saw the clip, right? I've played it for you before of the Italian prime minister having to guide him away from the parachuters because they're about to take a picture at G7. And all of a sudden, he's like a little kid. He starts wandering off to look at the parachuters. And she brings him back and he tries to put on his sunglasses and he's moving so darn slow. And the whole thing is obvious, right? Everything is so obvious. But as much as we would play these clips, and I would tell you that here on the show, and I tried to warn the Democrats, you probably shouldn't be running him, they wouldn't listen. And instead, we were told these were nothing but cheap fakes. We were cheap fakes for running them, and that somehow we were the ones wrong. I mean, like, this is gaslighting on steroids. And then, of course, America saw this.
I've changed the law. What's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people.
Yeah. I mean, that wasn't even the worst of it, right?
Happening. They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24% or 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right.
Oh, it cut off at the best time. Remember his line was, well, he's right, he sure beat Medicare. He beat it to death. I mean, this was unbelievable, right? And yet, there were people, believe it or not, the next morning on Morning Joe that were trying to make excuses, like one Douglas Brinkley, who's the go-to Democrat presidential historian, who actually had the audacity to say this.
If you read the transcripts of Trump and Biden, you'll see a coherency to what Biden was trying to get across.
Okay. Oh, yeah. If I just read the transcripts, I'll be able to read through the lines and figure that one out. I mean, I don't even know as the people that were transcribing it could figure it out, because some of the words were just like mumble jumble. I mean, he was giving Kamala a run for her money on the word salad, for goodness sakes. And yet, you want to talk about enablers? I mean, this was like Lady Macbeth style. You had Jill Biden. I'm just sorry. You know what? I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. If one of my loved ones, if my husband had anything going on like that, do you think I'd be propping him up, saying, "Hey, buddy, go, 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 go"? No, I'd say let's exit stage left. In their case, stage left. And let's ride out into the sunset and let's enjoy our time together and our grandchildren and try and have a nice life. But not Jill Biden. Right after that debate, she got up there, and of course he was toast, so she had to get the crowd going with this.
Yo, Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lied! Yes.
Okay. So now the question becomes, what role did Jill Biden have in all of this enabling? Was she the Autopen? Was she the one getting stuff done? Was it her chief of staff that was running the show? Meanwhile, what was she doing to her poor hubby? This is something that came up. Take a look at this. I want to share with you one of my former colleagues actually over at Fox, a guy named Leo Terrell, who's now I think at DOJ, and he tweeted this out. So he's a member of the administration, and they're looking at this. Elder abuse, criminal charges. In other words, she most likely knew about his health problems. She knew something. I mean, she had to have known something. Again, we don't know the timing on the prostate cancer. We don't know, as you heard from Donald Trump earlier, I mean, it's kind of a shame either way. It's a shame because clearly he should have had better medical care. He's the president of the United States. Thank you very much. So that calls into question just exactly what was going on with his doctor. But if his doctor did know and they were hiding it, then that becomes a problem. And on top of it, you got to say, what was she doing? You know, putting him out there. It was like Weekend at Bernie's, right? Like it was hard to watch at times, really, really hard to watch. So they're going to launch an investigation. The Autopen signatures may be declared null and void. There is certainly a legal argument to be made for that. Meanwhile, people that were pushing him are also going to be investigated for what they were doing. In other words, this thing is going to blow up in a big way. And you know what? You heard it here first because nobody's talking about this just yet. And I have a feeling it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I know because Donald Trump is a dog with a bone and it's the right thing to do, right? You don't prop up somebody with a frickin' Autopen and decide, okay, we're going to put all this stuff into law and we're going to pardon all these people. That is not the way the U.S. government works. The American people elect the president of the United States. And the president is responsible, per the Constitution, for actually governing. And you can't have somebody else with him not knowing what's going on. I mean, that's when you have to invoke the 25th Amendment. If you're choosing not to, we got problems, folks. This is huge. Absolutely, positively huge. Okay, you know what else is huge? What's going on the immigration front. And our friend Tom Homan, reminder, subscribe, share, like. We're growing big time here. I think we're coming up on 800,000. We're going to have a party when that happens, right? Okay, so Tom Homan, he wants action. He is really, really, really upset about all of these sanctuary cities. And he's like, you know, you guys can't have these sanctuary cities here in America because that is a direct violation of federal law. And by the way, there is that little thing called the Supremacy Clause. We've been through it here on the show that says you can't have these sanctuary cities, or if you're going to have them and the feds decide they're going to come in and they want to arrest people, guess what? They can. Because they trump, no pun intended, whatever's going on the local level. He wants action. He wants criminal arrests. Watch.
Well, I want to day one. You can. We'll move to the congressman, but just to finish the point here, when you look at the investigations, it's a lot of critics of Donald Trump and Democrats. Can you think of or name any public official or individual who's in these crosshairs other than those folks? I've got some up on the screen. It goes from Cuomo to Comey to Springsteen at this point.
Those who break the law should be prosecuted. And I don't know if any of these people have been prosecuted. That list I'm looking at the screen now, if any of them people have been prosecuted other than the congresswoman and other than two judges that impeded ICE and try to harbor and conceal an illegal alien and impede their enforcement efforts. So, no, that list shows I can't see everybody on that list, but are you telling me everybody on the list has been indicted?
No, it says
they'll be
investigations.
indicted or arrested if they violate the law.
No, it's investigations, but the fact that so many in these first 110 days, some of them which are announced on social media or other avenues before the defendants or even read their rights and given information, raises the question that it looks like to some that this is political targeting. The ACLU says it's autocratic targeting. And you respond tonight by saying, well, they did it. The Democrats did it. Well, if they did it, that's your view. Does that make it okay? That's what I'm asking.
I said, wait a minute. I said I find it shocking that they would accuse the Trump administration of weaponizing against their opponents when they did the exact thing during the Biden administration. I'm not making any comparison. I'm just saying I find it shocking for them to make that claim when they did it for 4 years. I'm not making any claim we're weaponizing anything. I don't think President Trump's weaponizing anything against his political opponents. We're enforcing the law. We're investigating crimes. If there's evidence that a crime has been acted upon, then they need to be charged. No one's, in the last 4 years, we heard no one's above the law. We're either our members of Congress, either our judges, and either our other people. You cross the line, you violate the law, you should be indicted. You should be charged.
So I know you brought up Congressman McIver. I said I'd give you time on that. The reports here that part of the narrative.
Like, how is it so hard to understand, right? Like, if you have laws and you break them, why should you not be prosecuted for them? I mean, there are things that are coming up. The president has called into question, for example, Bruce Springsteen, Oprah Winfrey, Beyonce, in terms of some of the fees that they were paid. He's alleging Beyonce got $11 million from the Kamala Harris campaign. The New York Times has reported that Oprah Winfrey's company got $2.5 million for that little God knows what, that little seminar that they had with Meryl Streep and a few others. And Springsteen was paid a lot of money. And so the president is questioning whether that was a violation of FEC rules. And so if it is, then, obviously that's a problem, because if you're doing something illegally, and I'm not suggesting they are, but if they were, then they should be prosecuted for that. Just like, for example, La Monica. I had to go there. La Monica. I mean, if you're LaMonica MacGyver and you decide, the representative from New Jersey, to go show up unannounced at the Delancey Detention Center outside Newark, New Jersey, and you see her there in red, and then you start fighting with ICE officers who tell you to go home and that you can't be there, and then you all of a sudden start, pushing yourself up against them, as you're about to see in this videotape. And apparently, according to DHS, they have even more videotape of this. If you're seemingly like body slamming people or being extremely aggressive in some of your words, then you know what, you're going to have a problem. Here we go. I think this is the particular scene. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you for that. Yeah, take a look. Okay, so she's getting kind of into it. It's getting physical. Like, that's not okay. All right? Like, I don't know in which world that is ever okay. And so to Tom Homan's point, like, if you're doing something illegal, this is law and order, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Habba said you had declined every opportunity to come to a resolution. You said they wanted you to...
We'll go back to that in a second. Okay, so law and order. Law and order. Tom Homan, that's all he's asking for. I don't think that's asking for much. I think that's kind of just basic stuff. Alina Habba, in her case, she followed through with charges on La Monica, and potentially she's apparently talking to Bonnie Coleman. We'll see what happens there with the other Congresswoman. We did not see Bonnie Coleman, however, physically, moving her body up against the ICE agent. She was charged with violating Title 18 U.S. Code Section 111A1 for assault, and also for impeding and interfering with law enforcement. Now, by the way, this carries up to 7 years in prison and penalties of, up to somewhere around $250K if she is indeed found guilty of this. She seems to think, again, that she's doing nothing wrong. She's just doing her job. And I think this is why you need sort of the voice of reason, whether it be a Donald Trump or just a Tom Homan out there saying, hey, you do something illegal, we're going to actually follow up on that. And this is what these people, some of them on the left, simply do not understand.
Well, Habba said you had declined every opportunity to come to a resolution. You said they wanted you to admit to something you didn't do. What did they want you to admit to?
I mean, there was a lot. We've had a week of back and forth with them, and I will say that I did not waver. You know, I showed up there to do my job, and she wanted me to admit to doing things, all of these different lists of things that she said that I did.
Like what?
I mean, from things of impeding, you know.
Yeah, like impeding, which is what you were doing.
There was some other things in there that she put in there, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But she wanted me to admit to these things, sign an agreement to them, and I'm not doing that, you know, because it's not true. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth and just tenseness, you know, all week from her and from her office. And so at the end of the day, once again, showed up to do my job, and I don't need to apologize for doing that. That is what the people of New Jersey expect for me to do. The 744,000, almost close to 800,000 people I represent, and why should we apologize about doing our job when ICE and Homeland Security created that environment?
I'm sorry. How is this doing your job? I'm going back to what Tom Homan's saying, because like how is that doing your job? That is not doing your job. Doing your job would be calling up, making an appointment, acting in a orderly fashion, not doing this, not starting some kind of riot. That is not doing your job. That is not what the people of New Jersey expect from you, okay? And this is, yes, why you're being charged with violating Title 18 U.S. Section Code 111A1. You know, the president said it. He knew what she was up to.
Oh, give me a break. Did you see her? She was out of control. Did you know, those days are over. The days of woke, no, I didn't. The days of woke are over. That woman, I have no idea who she is. That woman was out of control. She was shoving federal agents. She was out of control. The days of that crap are over in this country. We're going to have law and order.
Law and order, okay, which is why Alina's going after her. This is all, mind you, about the Delancey Immigration Detention Center, where they're mad because they're arresting people that they believe to be criminals that are also here illegally. And so they don't want that to happen. And this is disturbing in and of itself, right? Like, why is it that you guys want people that are criminals here running around illegally? Again, I go back to Homan.
First of all, how many illegal aliens I think in the United States? At least 20 million. He said, where'd you come up with that number? We've been speaking about 12 million for 20 years. We know we got 10.5 that we know of came to the border. How many don't we know of? I talked about known gotaways at 2 million. How many unknown gotaways we have? Like between the Big Bend sector in Texas where there's no technology, how many 1,000 people did get across through there? We wouldn't know. We would know now. But, you know, so I would venture over 20 million. But your question is, last count, last I looked, there was about 700,000 illegal aliens with criminal charges walking the streets of this country. 700,000. And that's what we're looking for now. That's what we're prioritizing. Them and national security threats.
Yeah. And by the way, like a few years ago, this was not that radical. A few years ago, Obama was deporting people. A few years ago, Hillary Clinton was saying we can't have open borders. I mean, you go back 20 years, the late Dianne Feinstein was saying we can't be the welfare system for Mexico. Well, we still can't be the welfare system for Mexico. But don't tell AOC.
If anyone's breaking the law in this situation, it's not members of Congress, it's the Department of Homeland Security. It's people like Tom Homan and Secretary Kristi Noem. You lay a finger on them, we are going to have a problem.
Oh, boy. Well, you know what? You're not going to intimidate this guy.
First of all, you can't intimidate me. Come on, give me a break. You know, I was enforcing him. I was wearing a green uniform, Border Patrol agent, for 5 years before she was even born. I had more than 3 decades enforcing immigration law before she became a member of Congress. I worked for 6 presidents. I've seen policies. I've seen hundreds of policies. Some worked, some didn't. But you can't deny the success of the Trump administration when it comes to border security. Again, the most secure border in the history of this nation. And I said from day one, and she knows this, you can not support ICE. Shame on you. You can support sanctuary cities. Shame on you. But you can't cross the line. You can't knowingly impede ICE law enforcement officers. That is a felony. You can't harbor and conceal, knowingly harbor and conceal an illegal alien from ICE. That is a felony. And you certainly can't commit criminal trespass. You know, and as far as New York, her district, this administration has done more to protect her district than she has. The number of criminal aliens we took off the streets of New York made her community much safer. She ought to be thanking the members of this administration, the men and women of ICE, who protect this country and make her community safer. So, you know, it's politics over public safety. It's just ridiculous. She ought to love her community more than she hates Trump, because we're doing a lot to protect her community.
You better believe he is. Anyway, she doesn't know what's going on. AOC seems to think she's going to be getting arrested. She may well be, right? Because this is what Homan is calling for. He's like, we can't have lawmakers that are trying to impede law enforcement. She's out there doing social media things where she's telling people how to avoid ICE, et cetera, et cetera. And so now, according to the latest and greatest this week, there on the Hill, a reporter approached her saying, hey, do you think you're going to be investigated? Has the DOJ told you anything yet? And she's responding with no. You know, and by the way, this is just my First Amendment right, I don't know. I mean, I'm with Tom on this one. Charlotte, thank you for your generosity. I'm really with Tom on this one, because my belief is that you've got to actually think about the greater good of the country and the federal government and the importance of what the federal government has to do in this moment in time. So it is about to get ugly, ladies and gentlemen, in more ways than one. But I think a lot of the border stuff that he put into play, Biden put into play, all that's going to get reversed. One, because it will be under Donald Trump, but also because of, think about what we led with, all of those Autopen signatures now coming into question. Look, this DHS means business. You get the DHS basically saying, hey, we call the shots when it comes to the borders. And now Kristi Noem, Ice Barbie, as they like to call her, she's really pretty. The joke is like, you know, some guys just want to pretend they're illegal so that they can get arrested by Ice Barbie, Kristi Noem. Anyway, Kristi was on Fox yesterday, and look, she's got a warning. She came out, and she just skewered Harvard University. So yesterday, Harvard University found out that all of its students that were here on certain student visas were going to have to be sent home. They said, you cannot enroll these kids. We are revoking your privilege to have these student visas at Harvard. Well, for Harvard, that's 27% of their student body. So, you know, that's kind of going to be a little bit painful for them, because those are the kids that are actually apparently paying the full boat. So there are, you know, a lot of Chinese wealthy people that are going to Harvard, and they're paying the full tuition. And Harvard has plenty of money, but, you know, it's always willing to take a dime more, I guess. Here is Kristi sending that message to Harvard and universities everywhere.
Some of these universities have even barred law enforcement officers from coming on campus and haven't even allowed there to be basic law and order on the areas that they're responsible for. So we're going to continue to do our investigations and make sure that what the Department of Homeland Security is responsible for, it will be done with integrity for the way that Congress laid out that programs should work, and the opportunities that we have to allow people to come into this country, learn, and to be a part of a country that promotes freedom and liberty and that everybody is equal. That's not what Harvard is doing, and that's not what we're seeing in some of these college campuses.
Could you foresee, or are you now considering similar moves with other universities like Columbia that has allowed Jewish students to be threatened and made unsafe?
Absolutely. We are absolutely. This should be a warning to every other university to get your act together. Get your act together, because we are coming to make sure that these programs, that you are facilitating an environment where students can learn, where they're safe, and that they're not discriminated against based on their race or their religion. Anti-Semitism will not be stood for, and any participation with a country or an entity or a terrorist group that hates America and perpetuates this kind of violence, we will stop it, and we will not allow that to happen, especially in places where our kids need to grow up and really learn what this country is about, what the world is about, and what it means to promote freedom and liberty.
There's a bit.
Yeah, it's amazing because these universities have gotten away with so much for so long. in such a sort of crazy way. I mean, the DEI stuff, right? The Harvard got called up all the way to the Supreme Court, right? Because they were like openly discriminating against Asian students because they wanted more black students. And so they were totally changing the criteria based on your skin color, which actually would be a violation, right? Again, of the Constitution, because you're not allowed to do that. And in this administration, you're definitely not allowed to do that. So Kristi Noem went to Harvard and she asked for a bunch of information. And she did not get this information. It was actually kind of simple stuff. Let's take a look at Kristi's letter here. And I'm going to read some of it to you because this is actually really important and relevant. She said, she wanted some information about the DEI policies, but they refused to provide it. So, quote, as a result of your refusal to comply with multiple requests to provide the Department of Homeland Security pertinent information while perpetuating an unsafe campus environment that is hostile to Jewish students, promotes pro-Hamas sympathies, and employs racist diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, you have lost this privilege. In other words, I can't have any more foreigners at your university, so that's going to really suck for your Harvard, given that 27% of the student body comes from overseas. She's revoking, she said, the Student and Exchange Visitor Program certification, meaning that Harvard is prohibited from having any aliens on F or J non-immigrant status visas for 25-26 academic school year. This decertification also means that existing aliens on F or J non-immigrant status must transfer to another university in order to maintain their non-immigrant status, or else they're out. I mean, hardball, okay? This administration is playing hardball. Harvard, you don't want to give us the information that we're just asking you for? That's not a big deal. They just asked for a little bit of information. Harvard didn't want to turn it over because Harvard thinks it's like, a country unto itself. Well, guess what? Your status is provided by way of the U.S. government, not to mention all the taxpayer dollars that are going to fund Harvard University, believe it or not, federal dollars. That's all going to change. It is changing. So just to keep you completely up to date, and in the moment, as I said, Harvard would take a huge financial hit. We'll see how this all plays out. I do think once again, you get the Trump administration with the law on their side. However, moments ago, just as we came to air, there is a judge. They do the judge shopping. You knew they would, right? Harvard immediately sued the administration. And so now the judge is saying, you can't do this. You can't do this. Well, I have a feeling the administration is going to say, oh, yes, we can. And we will. If you will not provide us information on the foreign students that you have let in, if we cannot verify that they are upstanding members of society that are not going to be pro-Hamas or endanger the lives of the Jewish students on campus or threaten anyone, then we don't know who they are. We're not going to allow you to give out those visas. It's gone. It's being revoked. Done. I mean, amazing. I'll tell you, you know what? He had 4 years to think about things. Everyone had 4 years to think about things. And now they're coming back with a vengeance. So this is a very different kind of administration than you saw first time around. First time around, he went in there, eyes wide open, tried to do the best job he could. Did a great job, right? The economy was terrific up until March 2020. Everything was going well. You had the biggest boost in median incomes that you had seen since, going all the way back to the 1950s. We had GDP growing. Everything was swimming along just beautifully. We had peace in the world. And then, given what they did, he decided he can't go back and play Mr. Nice Guy. And so he's armed with people, smart people, lots of lawyers, who are ready, willing, and able to take this on in a huge way. A big part of the Donald Trump agenda. Reminder, subscribe, share, like. I'm looking at your comments here. Michelle talking about when I get to 1 million. Woo! I can't wait till we get to 1 million. We do have to have a party when I get to 1 million. I think it's coming rather soon, guys, here on the channel. But one of the big parts of the Trump agenda, I should point out, is bringing manufacturing back here at home, right? That's super important to him, which is why Apple's getting a warning today, a warning direct from the president. Yeah, He's not too happy with Apple right now. By the way, if you're interested in investing, and you should be interested in investing, I want you to invest. And today is as good a time as ever. So go to 76research.com, use my code word dollar. Trump is ripping into Apple today. He put out something on Truth Social saying, you know what? We're going to put 25% tariffs on those iPhones if you're not going to make them in the U.S. Quote, I have long ago informed Tim Cook of Apple that I expect their iPhones will be sold in the USA and will be manufactured and built in the US, not India or any place else. If that is not the case, a tariff of at least 25% must be paid by Apple to the US. Thank you for your attention in this matter. Wow. All right. So, he's not kidding around. And Apple's a really important company, but a lot of their manufacturing, which was done in China, was being moved over to India. And he's like, no. You're not moving it to India. You're moving it here. Why? Because he wants high-tech manufacturing here in the U.S. These things are kind of important, right? Everybody's using them. Scott Bessent went on to Fox, actually, and explained this really well, our Treasury Secretary of the United States of America, and he said, listen, this is important because we need these high-tech manufacturing items manufactured back home.
Again, the president is trying to bring back precision manufacturing to the U.S., and I think that one of our greatest vulnerabilities are this external production, especially in semiconductors, and a large part of Apple's components are in semiconductors. So we would like to have Apple help us make the semiconductor supply chain more secure.
That makes sense. Right? AJ pointing out here that you've got Trump playing chess, basically, while everybody else is playing checkers. I agree. And you know what? This had to happen at some point. You know me, I don't love tariffs, right? I don't, it's not my first place to go. What I'd like to see is a world where we have actually no tariffs and we're prioritizing everything that we can do here. I don't like the idea that, if you go overseas to Ireland and you're manufacturing there, or you have a business there, that you're getting a 12% corporate tax as opposed to a much higher corporate tax here. That didn't make any sense. In the first Trump administration, he fixed that. You know what he said? Hey, you onshore your stuff, I'll give you the tax break, you'll have a better deal here. It's important, by the way, that we get this extension of the tax cuts going through, and we're seeing some activity and some movement on that big, beautiful bill, right? But also you've got to think about, hey, if Apple can manufacture some of this stuff here, there will be cost savings because it's closer to home. So maybe you pay a little bit more in wages, but then when you're shipping out all these things, right, you're actually going to have some cost savings based on the fact that you don't have to send it as far. You're closer to your end use customer. And again, it comes back to national security. Maybe the socks and underwear, we can figure that one out. But when you're talking about high-tech manufacturing, that's an issue of national security. And we want to be in the best possible position. Speaking of which, tax policy is related to that as well, right? You just heard me talking about corporate taxes. Well, we need this big, beautiful bill. It's moving on to the Senate, and Donald Trump just saying a couple weeks ago, actually maybe about a week and a half ago, how important that was. And if you combine that with all the money he's bringing into the U.S., he's got $5.1 trillion coming from the Middle East. That was kind of a productive tour, wouldn't you say? Certainly more than anything the Autopen could have done. Anyway, here he is saying, listen, we get this big, beautiful bill done. We get all this money coming back on shore. We got a recipe for success. We are a freaking rocket here in the U.S. of A.
It's the biggest bill of its kind ever in the history of this country. And Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune have done an incredible job. I mean, I'll let you know, we have to get a vote, but we have a lot of support for that bill. And if that happens on top of all of these trade deals that we're doing, this country will hit a point that you better go out and buy stock now. Let me tell you, this country will be like a rocket ship that goes straight up. This is going to be numbers that nobody's ever seen before. That's a very important element of all of this. If we get that. If you don't, and the Democrats are fighting it only because they want to fight. They have Trump derangement syndrome. If it was somebody else, they wouldn't fight. If you had a normal person, if you had some stiff sitting behind you, they'd be fine. But they have Trump derangement syndrome. Senator Schumer's become a Palestinian. welcome. I don't know when they're going to give him the ceremony, whatever the ceremony may be. But it's terrible what's happened to the Democrats. So very, very important element of everything, of what we're doing.
Yeah, right? Like it's taken off. We got a market that's down lower today, in part reaction to that threat of tariffs on Apple. And of course, Apple's a big component in so many of the indices. But I would just say, look, I think they're going to figure it out. I think that Tim Cook is going to find a way to make sure he avoids the 25% tariff. I want to go again to the point that he's making, Donald Trump is making, about all the success overseas and the trillions of dollars that he's back with from the Middle East.
We've had a very, very big week. You saw that. We got back from the Middle East and we brought $5.1 trillion back with us. We had tremendous. Our country, let me tell you, our country is hot. Our country is hot, and hot as it can be. It's amazing. If you go back 6 months, it was cold as could be. It was an embarrassment what was happening. And now I think we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. I don't even think it's close. I was told that also in the Middle East. The three rulers, three very good men that were very nice to us, they said, this is amazing, the transformation of the United States of America. They've never seen anything go so quickly. And it's literally over a period of 4 or 5 months, but really since November 5th. And I think we have the hottest country in the world right now. So we're doing well, and we'll keep it going. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to make a lot of people happy, a lot of people well. That's why we're here.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so market's down a little bit. What did I do? I bought because I always buy when the markets go down. It's just kind of... I was telling Rob, my colleague at 76 Research the other day, I think this just got ingrained in me from the time I was a little kid. I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. We were fine, but we didn't have a lot. And we would shop at Marshall's always for all our clothes. I mean, only Marshall's. And I remember being in Marshall's as a little kid with my dad. And he said to me, hey, Trish, come over here to the clearance rack. Clearance, remember, clearance is the best brand. So for years, like I thought clearance was a brand like Chanel or Ralph Lauren, you had to shop on clearance. So that got kind of ingrained in me, I think, from a very young age. So to this day, like I look, okay, Apple's a little bit on clearance today. So these are the kinds of opportunities that I welcome, and it's served me well over the years. I encourage you to get my research with my colleague, Rob Horton, who spent 20 years trading billions of dollars on Wall Street. Go check this out at 76research.com. Use my code word dollar because that's the introductory rate. It's only $1 a month and you can cancel anytime. No harm, no foul. But hopefully we can help you figure your way out around this stock market and get some stuff on clearance, right? Clearance is a good thing. I want to get to another big story here because I don't know how many of you have ever seen this, probably only here on my show, but Michelle Obama now has a little podcast for herself, and it's like just bad. Like everything about it is just bad. I'm like, how did this woman ever, like what? Again, like, maybe just try and go off into the sunset and actually try and repair whatever's going on in your marriage, because clearly the marriage is not going so well. No. And now we have new proof, like this is completely on the skids. I actually think that they're probably going to wind up divorced somehow, some way. I mean, maybe financially it's too complicated for them, but listen to what she said. It's like weird. Jesse Waters picked up on this. Michelle is moving on. She's moving on, at least mentally in her head, and she's got someone that she's sort of picked out. A young guy, a billionaire guy, the Airbnb guy. Can't make it up.
That's Brian Chesky, Airbnb CEO, tech billionaire. He's got a spare room, and Michelle's mentally moving in.
I have to say, Brian, if I'm a single girl out there and I find out that Brian Chesky is single and I can stay in his house,
there she
have
goes.
you ever?
There you go. Right to the relationship, Brian. You don't have to be feel pressured.
No, but we've never talked about this.
He just got here.
Have you ever?
Her and her husband have tried to set me up before, so
yeah.
What is that? Like seriously, what is that? Is she trying to come across as somehow a hot lady that can like get a younger guy. I don't know. I just think their marriage is over. I think they are completely done. She's moved on to this podcast with her brother. It meanders a lot. And she's also working on a dating show for like people her age. Obama, Barack. I think she's giving you a hint. I really do. Here's the new Netflix show coming out.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Obama, and I'm an executive producer for Later Daters. It's a fun new dating show from Higher Ground on Netflix. Now, I believe that all of us deserve love and a chance at finding happiness, no matter how old we are. No one has missed the boat. It just hasn't shown up. And Later Daters follows a group of adults over the age of 50 as they work with a dating coach to find their perfect match. You can stream it now on Netflix. So I hope you'll check it out this holiday season and let me know what you think.
Later daters. Okay, Michelle, it's all tailored right for you. You can get your own dating coach and move on from Barack. I don't actually think that show has actually made it to air. I think that was like a promo, but then it never actually happened. So now she just goes on and laments about her love life. Of course, apparently Barry has moved on. And interestingly, to a woman, kind of a woman who's, I'm just going to say, like, she's like, I realize she's older now, but she's like way out of his league, I'm talking about Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer Aniston, who apparently had to go on her friend Jimmy Kimmel's show to actually deny the rumors that she and Barack were, a hot and heavy item.
The magazine that came out a couple of weeks ago, In Touch.
Okay, so this is really hard to hear, so I'm just going to sort of narrate for you. This is the In Touch magazine. They wrote the truth about Jen and Barack, and she's sitting there going, I can't believe this. Of all the things like your PR person calls you about to find out that you're having some kind of an affair with Barack Obama, give me a break. Like, now I've heard it all. There's no way. I actually know Michelle better than I know Barack.
And then it's that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to say I find it hard to be true only because I'm not so sure he's into her, and I can't imagine why she'd be into him. But I do think that Michelle is looking around because, she's a black woman, and as a black woman, she just hasn't been able to find her voice until now.
We don't articulate as Black women our pain because it's almost like nobody ever gave us permission to do that.
And does anyone care?
Yeah, there's
Will
that.
they care?
If we knew, I think we would care. If we knew.
Mm-hmm.
If we knew.
Or, yeah, and we have to ask ourselves, the men in our lives is, why wait to be asked?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like what we go through is pretty obvious. I mean, maybe we're not complaining, but we're actually living life out loud,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really just lusting after that. What's his name? I wanted to call him Barry. What's his name?
That's Brian Chesky, Airbnb CEO, tech.
Okay, all right, Brian Chesky. All right, that's who she's after right now. Because, as a black woman, we don't express our pain enough. We just kind of roll with it. We kind of take it. And so we need to be different. Oh, and this is why I decided to miss the inauguration. She hasn't filled us in on why she decided to miss Jimmy Carter's funeral. But apparently this is the whole reason behind her not showing up at the inauguration, because she needs to prioritize herself. Me.
And so practicing no in a very different way intentionally. But then this is what makes it hard because, my decision to skip the inauguration, what people don't realize, or my decision.
Michelle, that has some music in it. So we want to be careful with the copyright issue for all our friends here in the music world. She went on to say that she decided to miss that because, you know what, she just didn't feel like it. And she needed to prioritize herself. And, as a black woman, she's not prioritizing herself. And so things need to change, blah, 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 blah. And that's how she gets to the decision to actually skip the inauguration for the 47th president of the United States of America. I mean, give me a break. Come on. She's just such an unbelievably selfish person who clearly doesn't think that she has to do squat. Like, I mean, she's a lazy lady who doesn't think she actually has to play a role, given that she is an important part of history. I mean, her husband was the first black president of the United States of America. By the way, the next time somebody thinks that, the U.S. is a racist country, I'm sorry. And granted, I get it. There are pockets of it, but hey, we elected Barack Obama twice. And she was part of that history. She is part of that history. She's forever part of that history. So to ignore any kind of your duties as first lady, like, that's not cool. Just because you don't feel like doing it and you feel like as a black woman, you just had to go along the whole way. I'm sorry, Michelle. You know what? We're just over it. We're all over it. You know what? I don't feel like having to make dinner for my kids tonight, but guess what? I got 3 kids and I make them dinner. Okay? There's just the reality of life. You were the first lady of the United States of America, the most powerful country in the world, for 8 years. You have a certain responsibility. 1, to show up at Jimmy Carter's funeral. You don't say you're on an extended vacation, for goodness sakes. And 2, to go to the inauguration. Come on. It's not that hard. But apparently for this lady, my God. How did they get elected, you guys? Really? How? Tell me. I want to know. Also, nobody's watching that show. The ratings are absolutely miserable. Once again, another podcast bites the dust. She has something in common with that Meghan Markle, who poor Harry really never should have gotten involved in. I'll tell you, the one thing you can control, a little bit of life advice here, is who you marry. Right? You can't control who your family is. You're born into this world, however it may be. And some of us get lucky and some of us not so lucky. But the one thing you actually can have a say in is who your spouse is. And so it's a really important decision. Really, really important decision, because it has such a massive effect on the rest of your life. And you look at poor Prince Harry, and let's just say he made the wrong decision. Oh, we have Memorial Day weekend coming up. I'm still going to be here on the channel with a lot of content coming your way. I may even be live again on Monday, but I just want to thank all our veterans and all the amazing, amazing people that have sacrificed their lives to give us this opportunity that we have to be here as free Americans today. So my heart goes out to all of them. My father's a veteran. My father-in-law, God rest his soul, was a veteran. And look, if it weren't for people like that, people willing to give their lives for us, we wouldn't be what we are. So remember that. When the left tries to go all woke and somehow disrespect and hate on America and hate on our great values, remember who you are, who we are collectively together as a nation, and have an enjoyable, wonderful, memorable Memorial Day weekend. I'll see you right back here live on Monday.